Ankemat, Heteperu, welcome back to Kemetic Tuesday. Today, I want to talk to you about your identity as a son of God or as purely a God, a divine heir, an aspect of divinity itself, expressing itself in humanity. Whether you want to use the word Elohim, you want to say gods, or you want to say Netcheru, I want to speak to that identity within you for a moment. And I'm going to do so using a few different angles. Yes, I'm going to use the Bible for some. Yes, I'm going to dig deep into Kemeticism as this is Kemetic Tuesday. So bear with me. The reason that I am very comfortable using the Bible, even when I'm dealing with Kemeticism, is because I recognize that the Bible is very much multicultural in the way that it is, in the way that it originally was. In a modern sense, when a lot of scholars and theologians or just Christian pastors look at the Bible, they'll usually study it through the lens of the Greeks and the Latins. And if they're really getting deep, they'll go into the Hebraic. And I'm not against that. I'm always for more studying. My pet peeve or the issue that I have with only that is that there's more cultures presented throughout the Bible. And even when you're dealing with the source material of a lot of the scriptures, it's more than just the Hebraic, because even the Hebraic is a hodgepodge of multiple other cultures that the Hebrews themselves, even in the Bible that we have today, are paying homage to, but are demonized by contemporary Christians today. So it's a weird mix that you get. But the actual truth concerning the Bible is that it's very much multicultural. I've gone on record saying multiple times before that the Bible is a compilation of scriptures that were taken from the Egyptians, from the Canaanites, from the Mesopotamians, from the Hebrews, and they were haphazardly stitched together by the Romans. And then, adding to it, over time, people took from it, they added to it, they remixed it, fitting the agendas that they had. But when you go back to the original text, not just the original text, as in the earliest version of what you can find written in the Bible, but the origin of where the author would have been, of what the author himself or herself would have been referencing from the culture that they're talking about. And I've said this before, when dealing with the Bible, what is not Hebraic is oftentimes Kemetic. And if not Kemetic, it's Canaanite. So the Bible, even if a lot of Black conscious people or people who are heavily into the Kemetic culture, even if they don't like it, the Bible very much is a Kemetic text. And that is a fact that might irritate Christians and Kemites together. So that's why you have figures like Moses, and we're actually going to talk about him just a little bit today. Moses, part of his story is that he was born a Hebrew, but raised as a son of Pharaoh. Now, that one speaks to the ethnicity of Moses and that he was something that was able to blend in and go almost unnoticed. Which meant that the Hebrews and the Egyptians, or the Hebrews and the Kemites, didn't look too different from one another. And they got along, truthfully. You see a lot of mixing between the Hebraic and the Kemetic cultures throughout the Bible. Again, you have it with Moses. You have it earlier than Moses with Joseph. In fact, in order for the Israelites to come into the full promise and actually walk in their blessing and fulfill the promise and the covenant, it required Egypt's hand. Right? So you have this situation where when doing their blessing, Esau and Jacob, Isaac crosses his hands in order to bless his sons. Well, that kind of throws things out of whack, because the blessing that was meant for one goes to the other and vice versa, which means that the lineages that they're walking through, the blessing that they're walking in, is actually out of sync. Eventually it goes down, and Jacob eventually becomes Israel after he beats up Yahweh in the wilderness. And he has a bunch of sons, and one of those sons is Joseph. Joseph grows up and he's favored amongst his brothers. His brothers get jealous. They sell him into slavery. Eventually, he becomes pretty much the ruler of Egypt itself, to the point where he's actually positioned in a way to be able to bless his family in a time of famine. Well, one of the things that happens is that in fulfilling the firstborn of covenant birthright is that he actually has to receive a double or twofold blessing. And that actually goes to his son. See, there is no tribe of Joseph. Joseph actually gets two tribes named after his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Joseph at this time is married to an Egyptian woman, which meant that in order for them to come back into alignment, it required the bloodline of the Egyptians. And yes, he was blessed with the crossing of arms too. I'm saying that just to say that the cultures are very much tied together. So going back to Moses, Moses being the Kemetic priest himself, a master of Kemetic mysteries, arts, practices, skills, and spirituality, is the forerunner and one of the forefathers within the Hebraic culture. In fact, a lot of what is standardized amongst the Hebrews came from Moses, who was very much Kemetic by culture. In fact, Moses did not speak Hebrew. He spoke Medu, which is why his brother Aaron had to translate for him. Now, I've done a session on Moses already, just laying the groundwork for what I want to talk about today, which is actually Moses' apprentice, Joshua. Or if you were to say it in his native tongue, it would be Yeshua. Yes, the student of Moses actually carries the same name and truthfully the same function as Yeshua, who would later come thousands of years later. Which is, there's many debates on the identity of Joshua. I've heard people come up with theories that the Bible timeline is all thrown off. And there's some people that actually believe that the Joshua that was a student of Moses is the same Yeshua that's talked about in the New Testament. I don't necessarily agree with that, but the thought exists because of the similarities between the figures and their association with Moses and their embrace of Kemetic culture, amongst many other things. Now, Joshua, or Yeshua in this case, is known not only as Joshua the general or Joshua the warrior, but Joshua the son of Nun. In fact, it's in the book of Numbers, chapter 27, verse 18 through 20, and it says, Moses, and this is his God, this is Yahweh speaking to Moses. He says, take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him and have him stand before Eleazar, the priest, and before all the congregation, and commission him in their sight. You shall put some of your authority on him, in order that all the congregation of the sons of Israel may obey him. And that's such a powerful verse because it's actually about you. And when I say it's actually about you, I'm not speaking against the possibility of there being a historical event there, but I want to focus on the fact that this is dealing with your sonship. This is your commissioning ceremony before you came into the earth. What am I talking about here? See, Joshua in the Old Testament and Yeshua in the New Testament play a similar role in that they speak to our identities. They actually are revealing aspects of ourselves and actually the journey that we undergo. See, both Yeshuas are known for being deliverers in their own special way, students of Moses, masters and warriors in their own right, powerful leaders. Of course, the name Yeshua itself means to save, meaning that it's speaking to the ability to come out of some sort of bondage. Now, what in the world does this have to do with you? Well, if you look at this from a stance within the spirit, right? You look at this from the spirit, you find yourself. Joshua, in the same way that Yeshua is revealing you to you, Joshua is doing the same thing in the Old Testament. It's a precursor to you revealing your essence, your background, your cosmic origins, your heavenly origins. I even love the fact that he's called the son of Nun. Now, in Hebrew, Nun is one of the living letters, which deals with multiplication. It's the fish, it's the sperm, it's the seed. It's dealing with that thing that should continue to grow and blossom. And that's mighty on its own. But Nun is actually a Kemetic term, speaking to one of the Netchers named Nun. And it deals with the primordial waters. It's that source by which all things originate from. The primordial, chaotic ocean, dealing with a sense of eternity. So Joshua, the son of the primordial waters, is revealing the truth about you. And now in Kemetic culture, it's out of the primordial waters that even Ra, the first deity, the first Netcher, emerges from. It's the darkness that gives birth to the light, that gives birth to gods. That's you. So by taking on that epithet of son of Nun is actually drawing on your eternal record. So if you would replace the name Joshua or Yeshua with your name, and you then become the son of Nun, what if you are a woman? Should you be the daughter of Nun? No. See, son, especially when I talk about sonship, is a gender neutral term that just means heir, meaning one who's receiving an inheritance from whatever it is they're the son to. So in this case, you're the son of Nun. You're the one that's receiving an inheritance. You've received an abundance from the primordial waters, from eternity itself. So it's speaking to a position where you're walking in your eternity, manifesting it on the earth and walking in its fullness. Sounds a lot cooler when you put it that way. And even love the way that they layer it. Take Yeshua, the son of the primordial waters, a man in whom is the Spirit. Lay your hands on him, bring him before the priests, before the world, everyone, right? Put your authority on him. This is dominion. In order that all the congregation of the sons of Israel may obey him. Remember, I told you earlier that Israel, there is no Israel without Kemet. There is no all the congregations of the sons of Israel without Kemet. Israel on its own actually speaks to another, it simultaneously speaks to a place of sonship. Israel is also one of those figures who you're supposed to identify yourself with, because he actually speaks to your spiritual identity. Israel, well, he goes from Jacob to being Israel. Jacob, which means the supplanter, the trickster, the rebellious one, if you would. And then he goes into being Israel, which means the prince of El, the son of El. Now, I've gotten in a lot of trouble for telling people that the name of the father is El, but that speaks to something. See, the way that he actually went through becoming the son of El or the prince of El is that he had to defeat the God that he was worshiping. He actually had to overthrow Yahweh. That is the story as they put it in your Bible. Jacob had to defeat his God, and when he overcame the God of his forefathers, he rose above him and actually is seated as his equal, which is why, you know, the Bible, oftentimes, not just in the Bible, but in cultures, they give you a name change. You get a name change whenever your nature changes, whenever your essence changes. See, he's no longer the supplanter. Now he's also a prince or a son of El, but he did that by defeating the God that he was worshiping, the God that was once over him. Now, this is very similar to the story of Heru, where he has to defeat Set, who's the God that's in control at the time, in order to regain his authority and have himself seated in heavenly places. What if I said that that place deals with ignorance? It's who you are before you know what God you are. See, there's you when you're just a God of your ancestry. You're just a person living underneath your ancestry. And then there's you when you come into the knowledge of your eternal blueprint, who you really are, where you're actually from. See, in the same way that you can either be Jacob or Israel, depending on where you are in your journey, you can be just Yeshua, or you could be the son of Nun, because that is a differentiator. That is a keynote factor, is that when we're talking about Joshua, the son of Nun, you're dealing with someone who's operating in the fullness, dominion over the field, dominion over the full range of the kingdom itself. This again is talking about you. This is you and your heavenly blueprint. You walking as an embodiment, you being the Netcher, the member of Elohim that you're meant to be, the God that you are, the divine essence, the record, the blueprint, whatever word you're more comfortable with is what this is actually referring to. It's you being the God that you were always meant to be. So when the Bible is calling him the son of Nun, that's not really speaking to his ancestry. That's speaking to his dominion. That's speaking to the fact that he's actually divorced his ancestry and is now pulling from heavenly streams. See, we often give Moses credit for sitting in the presence and in the face with his God for 80 days, 40 days, take a break, 40 more days. But Joshua didn't take a break. He was there too. Someone who's beholding their heavenly blueprint comes out a little bit different than someone who's just operating from their ancestry. And trust me, I'm not one of those people that believe that you have to forsake your ancestry in order to be spiritual. Not the point. It's just that there comes a point where you begin to identify higher. Ancestry is a beautiful thing. I'm proud to be Black, but it's the spiritual aspects of myself. I do myself a disservice to not know what type of God I'm supposed to be on the earth. In fact, in a conversation with Mother, or Holy Spirit as the Christians call her, just a few days ago, she was saying, speaking to me about a specific aspect, she said, that's your divinity. In order to exercise your divinity, you have to know what your divinity is. What are you in Nun? What came out of Nun that became you? What came out of chaos? What came out of the primordial ocean that became you? Well, in the Hebrew culture, they might call that the Mem. What came out of the upper waters, the heavenly ocean? When you were birthed in that facet, what were you? It's in being that you tap into the streams, or you can actually be all that you were ever meant to be. It's a lot to ponder, a lot to meditate on. Hopefully I wasn't too cryptic in talking about this and y'all can actually follow what I'm saying. But I'll leave y'all with that. If there's ever a question to ask, if there's ever something to be meditated on, something to seek, a mystery to unravel, what aspect of divinity am I? When I came to earth, what force am I meant to embody? What areas do I rule and reign over? Beyond my ancestry, but speaking to who I am in eternity. Food for thought. Y'all, that's it for Kemetic Tuesday. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Later.